Welcome to the Future of Payroll and Workforce Management Insights by HR.com, your go-to resource for insights into payroll and workforce management. From navigating compliance and technology trends to exploring the latest in global payroll solutions, we're here to keep you ahead of the curve. Join us as we dive into the forces reshaping payroll and share practical strategies to optimize your workforce management. Let's get started. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Future of Payroll and Workforce Management, a podcast here at HR.com, where I am Executive Community Leader of Future of Payroll, an online community here, and I do a bunch of other things in addition to hosting this podcast. Sometimes I forget everything that I do here, some of the things I do here at HR.com, but in any event, enough about me. Today is about my guest, Thomas Derum. I hope I pronounced that right, Thomas. You are the CEO and founder of Outstaffer, website Outstaffer.com, and you are an employer of record based out in Australia, where it is a lot hotter than it is over here in New England, where I am today. Welcome.
G'day, Brent. How are you?
Oh, absolutely. I'm doing great. Thanks. I hope you're doing well too.
It's
Thanks for
32 degrees here, and I think the temperature's, 1 or 2 degrees?
Right. That's the Fahrenheit Celsius conversion. Yeah. We're still living in the 17th century. We go by Fahrenheit over here and or whatever over here in the United States. But in any event, we have a really interesting topic to get into today. It's AI at the front lines and intersection of EORs and global hiring. And I'm really looking forward to this. This is a really, really rich topic. But first, I'd like to ask all my guests, and I'll ask you too, what got you into the world of work? What's your passion in this space? Obviously, you founded a company in it. What gets you going every day when it comes to the world of work, Thomas?
Thanks, Brent. It's honestly, it's pretty simple. A lot of talent is wasted simply because opportunity and people really aren't in the same place. And we see that here in Australia, we're a population of 25 million, and there's a lot of people that obviously work globally. There's so there's brilliant people all around the world who are capable of doing fantastic work, but they're really held back by geography, slow hiring processes or systems that weren't built really for the way which we work today. And I see the same pain on the employee side as well. So founders, HR teams, hiring managers, they need to hire, but they can't find the right people. They're doing, CV slogs, which a lot of people have done, losing candidates to slow processes or stuck because, the local talent market just isn't deep enough. As a serial entrepreneur and founder, I've lived that pain myself. I actually live in and work from a place called the Yarra Valley. That's about an hour east of Melbourne. It's pretty famous for wine, cheese, produce, not exactly a global tech hub. And if I had to commute every day to a city like so many people do, I'd lose 3 hours that I could really spend with my family, contributing to the community. But more in my case, it's probably doing a lot of additional work that I do. Yet really from there, from here, we run a global business and employ hundreds of people around the world. And we're able to do that because technology, remote work, and EOR make that possible. I know I'm not alone. There's millions of people around the world who want that same freedom to be able to stay closer to their families, avoid long commutes, and be part of the community, but also be able to do meaningful work. So what really drives me is, I guess, it's the opportunity to help shape that shift. So it's to make people have access to meaningful work from wherever they live, to make it possible for businesses to hire the right talent, not just the nearest talent, to make hiring itself, faster, easier, and fairer. And I think what I'm really interested about as well is, AI, technology, how we can actually use those to remove the friction that really stops all that from happening.
Yeah. By the way, this is a great sort of characterization of the EOR space, or what EORs
Absolutely.
what they do, and I love what EORs do, because I kind of share your passion or your interest in this area specifically. I myself was sort of an early adopter in the remote work realm. I've been working mostly from my home office since for the last 20 years, to be quite candid.
Yeah, and particularly since COVID, there's been, a fundamental shift in how people work around the world. And
Yeah.
um, we did have a lot of companies around who, really embrace remote working. I was certainly one of those early adopters. But with COVID, and in Australia has been a bit of a unique case in that, is in the city of Melbourne, we had the world's longest lockdown of any city. Um, and companies were forced to actually adapt the way in which they worked. And what it really showed was people could actually work remotely, uh, uh, and in a lot of cases be a lot more productive in doing so. Obviously, it depends on the role. You're not going to have a frontline worker work remotely, like a police officer or a nurse, for example. So it is absolutely contingent on the role, but there's definitely a big shift that COVID's helped accelerated, and I think that's going to continue far into the future.
Yeah, yeah, right, right. When it comes to desk workers, it absolutely is an option, and COVID did absolutely sort of accelerate things, and it's really interesting to see that whole give and take. Now, one of the things about the EOR space is interesting. I think this is that's a, you know encouraging. And it's a great segue into our topic, is that EORs were sort of found, the EOR space was sort of established because there was a need to make it easier or less, yeah, easier to hire folks in a new region. From the employer side of things, having that flexibility from the employer side of things, and it has turned into a way to kind of find talent wherever, the best talent wherever it is, all over the
Mm.
globe, which is great. And we have sort of artificial intelligence. Um, you know, we already hear some here. We can imagine some people rolling their eyes. Oh, another artificial intelligence sort of topic here. But this is real. It is really absolutely upending
Yeah,
hiring.
and
And what's going on? So yeah,
yeah,
go ahead.
it's interesting because look, there is certainly a let's just say a apprehension, a fear when it comes to AI. And in the Australian context, it's been quite interesting because like I was in the US not long ago, and it's definitely being embraced in a lot of organizations. And that's happening here more at the big end of town. But there's a lot of resistance. And that's principally out of a fear that, is AI going to replace my job? Um, which is totally understandable. Um, but what we're sort of seeing is, and this is firsthand, and my view is that it's the greatest productivity boost that we've invented in recent memory, and it really works well, in that co-pilot type of environment, and that's certainly the approach that we've taken with AI. So it's not, and what I often say to our team is, because we do employ a lot of recruiters as well, AI is not going to replace you. And the reason for that is, in recruitment, in HR, in EOR, at the end of the day, we're still hiring a person. So a human is hiring a person. So you're never going to have a situation where AI will will replace that actual interaction. Okay. What it's about is, how can we make that fairer? How can we make that more efficient? How can we make that easier? How can we make people more productive to be able to do more with less? And particularly that flows through into skill gaps, talent shortages that we have, particularly across countries in Australia. I know the US, New Zealand, UK, others are having huge talent shortages, and this is certainly a way in which we can use technology to alleviate some of those challenges.
Yeah, yeah, it's super interesting. And you really sort of dove into one of the questions I had. Thanks for sort of anticipating it here, the balance that should exist between human oversight and AI automation in hiring. I think we're sort of
Yep.
getting right, sort of segueing right into that with some of what you're saying. But let's back up for a
Yeah.
second here. Um, how is AI enhancing like fairness and
Yeah.
access and global recruitment and
It's
onboarding? Like what's
it,
the AI
it's
factor here?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we've seen first hand, and this is after tens of thousands of conversational interviews where we've actually used a product that we've built over the last 12 months, which we call Outstaffer AI Recruiter. And we've, as I said, we've literally put that through tens of thousands of conversational interviews, but that's all been with full human oversight. And and that is, and what we found there was AI meaningfully improved both fairness and access in ways that traditional recruitment just hasn't been able to.
Really?
And just to expand that a bit, it's um, sort of the first major change there is, what we sort of call, universal access. So, most applicants, and I'm sure everyone's been in this situation where they've applied for a role, which is part of the traditional process. And in a lot of cases, and in most cases, they actually don't get a response. So industry response rates are incredibly low. So if I recall correctly, LinkedIn have a response rate of about 3 to 13%. Indeed, it's like 20 to 25%. Direct company applications, it's often 2 to 5% get responses. Now, obviously, some companies do a lot better than others, but that is the sort of the general the general gist of that. Now, what we did was we looked at that and we've like, how do we make sure every single applicant actually doesn't just get a response but gets an interview? Now, obviously, if you have 200 applicants, 300 applicants, 400 applicants, or even 100 applicants, it's just not feasible to interview every person. The traditional process at the moment is a resume will come in, a recruiter will screen it, or they might use an AI tool to screen that resume. What we do with, or what we did was we looked at that and we said, okay, rather than scanning the resume, sending them a thanks but no thank template. But what we do is every applicant who actually applies gets an interview. Okay.
Interesting.
Um, and what we found in doing that is that the candidate experience went up significantly because their biggest issue is just no response. Okay,
Right.
and that's not to suggest that companies aren't doing that intentionally. In a lot of cases, they've got so many applicants, they're overwhelmed, they just don't have the time to respond to every single applicant that comes in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and that was one of the things that we did. The second thing that we found there was, every candidate goes through the exact same structured process. So that's, it's the same questions, but very interactive, pacing, follow-ups, scoring, and once we did that structure, just as an example, some of the what we found was gender-based discrimination actually dropped by almost 45% compared to
Really?
human-only screening.
Okay.
Um,
That's
so
good.
and so it's quite interesting just seeing how all that works. Um, the third thing that sits there is just in terms of candidate experience that I spoke to before. So across all the interviews we ran, 78% of candidates actually chose AI interview when given the choice.
Interesting.
Our NPS was slightly higher than human screeners, okay, but 71% of open-ended comments was positive about the AI interview compared to human screeners, which was about 52%. Now, one of the most surprising insights, though, was that even though we explicitly told candidates that they were speaking with an AI agent, 57% didn't actually realize that they were talking to an AI agent.
Wow.
Because the conversation was very natural. And the way we've built this product, sometimes it's difficult to articulate until you actually, experience it yourself or listen to it. But Anna, as we call her, actually, interacts with candidates, in a very, human-like manner.
You know what's interesting here is I feel like this is a revelation, right? Because we hear about this all the time in the recruitment space. Just this idea that nobody's getting an interview. People that should get an interview are getting screened down improperly.
Yeah,
And, employers are losing out on potential great talent, and they're maybe
yeah,
hiring talent that's not so great, but that talent makes it through the screen.
yep,
There's problems with the screening and all that. And I'm sure somebody probably thought of this because you thought about it. You thought of it, right? But others probably elsewhere too thought of this, but I did not. It did not occur to
yeah,
me that, flip it on its head, we're we're trying to figure out, okay, how do we get back to everybody so that they feel included, so they just feel
yes,
like they've been
absolutely.
respected with a even just a curse, just a cursory sort of, thank you, but you weren't really the right fit, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah, without even an interview,
And
right?
it's usually
But
just a template that someone's just sent out because they've pushed the button, or in some cases, AI is making that decision.
Well, yeah, and we're kind of getting to the punchline here is that
Yep.
why not just give everybody an interview, and if you can't do that when it's just people, because there aren't enough people to do all the interviews of 200 folks, for
Yeah.
a role, or that's even maybe a low number for some roles. But
Yeah.
if you have an
Absolutely.
AI, then I think it was Anna's the name of your
Yeah.
agent. Anna can conduct more than one interview at a time. I mean,
And 24/7. So
yes.
because what we do is um, when and this, just to be clear, works really well for inbound applicants.
Uh,
Okay. We're not convinced about outbound.
okay.
You will get some candidates who are happy to do that interview process through an AI agent, but generally speaking, you're chasing them. Um,
Yeah.
you're courting them, so they're not necessarily open to that type of engagement.
Oh,
So
the dynamic's
inbound
completely different.
works really well.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt, but I mean, you're right. The dynamic's completely different. It's more
Yeah,
of a sale versus
absolutely.
of
Yeah,
sort of a cold call, not necessarily, but it's more of a chase than sort of an
it,
attract.
yeah,
But I love this, and it's really really interesting how that even just that, because that's the other thing is that I think there's this folks have been wrestling in the recruiting space over, just, okay, how much engagement is necessary that I can kind of scale at and actually do to sort of satisfy that need of the typical candidate to feel included and just respected and all that. That's really
yeah,
interesting. One other thing that
totally.
you mentioned, well, just real quick though, that 24/7 piece of it. I mean, you want to talk about widely distributed teams
Mm,
once they're hired, that being sort of another selling point of the EOR model. Well, if you can have sort of widely distributed, what would be called widely distributed hiring, right?
yep.
Um, and you can actually accommodate the full scope of time zones, and I mean, it's that's a logistical challenge that's not to be sort of trifled with.
Oh, it is. Yeah. Bit easier for us in Australia because like a lot of the hires that we do is across APAC. So we're in a fairly similar time zone, but we have clients in the US, and the challenge always is, you know, particularly if they're on the East Coast, you know, how they hire someone in the Philippines or Vietnam or India, you know, in that scenario. So the candidate effectively has to be up at the middle of the night to do the interview.
Yeah, and
Um,
that yeah.
and that's, you know, and that tends to be you know, a challenge. But then what that also enables is, you know, it's a much more, let's say, higher engagement with people, and as you said, it doesn't really matter where they are. They're able to actually go through that process.
Yeah, yeah, you're removing a highly dissuasive factor
Yeah,
in someone deciding to even consider working at your company. Um,
yeah,
h- how we could talk about this all day long. We have
totally.
a podcast. It's like about 20 to 25 minutes. And I
Yeah,
want to make sure we get to something here. Um,
yeah,
because this is the extra cool part. This has all been cool, but the extra cool
yeah.
part is, where do you think AI driven, EOR models, how are they going to redefine global employment over the next decade? Like, where is this
Yeah,
going?
it's an interesting point. So if you zoom out and you sort of look at global employment today, you know, I think we're entering a completely new phase. AI isn't just, you know, changing the way companies hire; it's reshaping how they employ people, you know, across borders. And from what we're seeing at Outstaffer, you know, I think there's sort of three major shifts coming. So right now, yeah, hiring someone overseas is still complex. You know, you have platforms like ours and others out there which, you know, handle, you know, most of that burden using, you know, software and AI within the software to do so, acting as the employer of record, of course. So, you know, we're handling everything from, you know, hiring, onboarding through to compliance, payroll, benefits, tax, um, HR support, you know, so on and so forth. And that can, you know, generally take, you know, days or weeks to onboard an employee. Even though you can onboard someone theoretically very quickly, there's still, you know, verification and things that you still need to do as the employee before they actually start.
Mm.
Now, the key thing with AI is that's, you know, in my view, collapsing those timelines. So we're already seeing things like document verifications happening, you know, instantly. ID obviously checking is one that's already happened, which you can do. You know, like our platform, for example, does, like others, does AI AI powered identity verification immediately
Mhm.
in real time. But it's also, you know, the compliance workflows, employment agreements generated instantly, onboarding steps automatically. So I think over the next decade, like onboarding talent globally will almost be closer to same day or real time experience, and
Mm.
AI will remove a lot of that friction. Okay,
I love that.
from a hiring perspective. The other thing where I think AI makes it possible, it's really that you can then screen and evaluate talent at scale across countries, but you can do it in a more consistent and fair way. So EOR makes it possible to employ them, you know, legally and compliantly without setting up the entity, or you know, outsourcing it to a third party. But those sort of two forces really combine to, I think, create a bit of a dramatic shift. And that's where, you know, companies can stop thinking about in terms of just hiring in the local labor market. Um,
Mm.
so then they can start thinking, you know, globally by default, like, who is the best person for the role
Mm.
anywhere, you know, not who can commute to my office.
Mm.
Um, um, and that will, I think, redistribute opportunity around the world. So, you know, people can earn, you know, global incomes without leaving home. They can stay, you know, close to families, communities, support networks. You know, I think that will over time have an impact on migration
Yeah.
flows as well. And I think what that all leads into is distributed teams are becoming normal, not special.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so in Victoria, which is the state that I live in Australia, the state government is actually proposing to make work from home a right.
Oh, wow. Wow. Okay.
Which is interesting. Now, personally, I think it should be between the employer and the employee.
Right.
That government shouldn't necessarily make that decision. But the point that I'm making, of course, is this is the way the world is moving.
Yeah. You know what's interesting is,
Um,
sorry to interrupt. I didn't mean to, but you made me think of something. Widely distributed economic prosperity.
Indeed, indeed.
Yeah. That's
Um,
really interesting.
and you see that like we have clients in Australia, the US, we're hiring tech talent, everything from full stack developers to stack to front end, back end, UX designers, and some of these roles are pretty complex, data and analysts, and we're doing recruitment not just, let's say, in Australia, but we're also doing that across the Asia Pacific region, and it is interesting because you do find, candidates that actually are sitting in the Philippines or Malaysia or Vietnam or India in that cases, which are, in some cases on par with talent that you would get in Australia or the US.
Okay.
And so, and that's, and of course there's a wage difference between the different countries, but what that then enables and what we find is a lot of those employees are getting job opportunities. They're actually getting, a higher salary, which makes a fundamental change in their life.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's very exciting and encouraging, to be honest. I mean, that we hear so much sort of doomsday talk about AI, honestly, and there are things to be, cognizant of and to keep an eye on, but at the same time, there's so much upside, and it's really interesting that AI is actually making the uniquely human experience more human, which is really
Yeah.
interesting.
And, but one of the things that I think sits there, and I think this is one of the important lessons that um, we had was um, AI really, from our perspective, from a recruitment perspective, should lead first round interviews, and humans should lead everything thereafter.
Right, right.
And the reason for that was because and we actually went through. We even tried to do AI right through the process end to end, and we just found that ultimately didn't work, and the numbers ultimately ended up speaking for themselves, and I guess that's where we found the sweet spot, so to speak, and that is where and really sort of the process that we've built around that is um, that even though once a candidate makes an application, they get an SMS or an email to click on a link to do their interview. They click on the link, they run through their interview, usually 10, 15 minutes. And then Anna does all the assessment in terms of customer service ability, English level, critical thinking skills. Our recruiters then get a transcript, full recording, scorecard, everything they need. But this is the key part. They are co-piloting and they are the ones that are making the decisions. It's not the AI.
Right, right.
Um, and we found that human validation and that hybrid model worked exceptionally well, to the point where, and this is over tens of thousands of interviews. When you run it in that way, we actually got 12% more job offers, 18% more job starts using AI. 17% higher 30-day retention. As I said, the numbers, speak for themselves, because what the hiring manager is basically getting is, or each candidate arrives with, their full profile, AI scorecard, English language estimate, CV, and everything's really there out of those 200 applicants that have applied. So then the recruiter is able to, or the hiring manager is able to go, these are the 5 or 6 I'm going to speak to. And they're
Yeah.
able to do that relatively quickly.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, we're running out of time here, but I just want to say, this is really that scientific piece of it, and the art and science of finding that balance between humans and AI. Really fascinating stuff, Thomas. Thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast. This has been very illuminating.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks for tuning in to the Future of Workforce Management and Payroll Insights by HR.com. We hope today's episode brought you valuable insights and fresh perspectives on the future of payroll and workforce management. Be sure to check out more episodes and explore resources at HR.com/podcast or wherever you listen to podcasts. Until next time, keep innovating and making a difference in the world of payroll and workforce management.